watch a show like this, it's so easy to cringe and be like, could it be me? It is you today. It has been you yesterday. It will keep being you if you keep lying to people. A lot of us can relate to limerence. You might not be on Martha end, you might be on Richard's end. Y'all, we gotta talk about Baby Reindeer. Oh my gosh. Ah, scripting. Scripting. When I watch movies and TV show, I'm normally watching the script, not even what is shown on the camera. I want to see what the writer is trying to say about the characters in the film or the TV show. And man, Richard did his thing. The psychology lover in me, the person who likes to study why we move the way we do, I appreciate someone like Richard utilizing narrative therapy to gain power of your story when you've taken so many L's, well, seen as L's anyways, behind the scenes to say, you know what, I'm gonna actually sit with this, and I'm gonna let the audience have to sit with this thing too. I watched Baby Reindeer with my friends, and we did it in one sitting, like doing hair. We watched it one sitting, then had to go hang out with my brothers again, and everybody was enamored by what was going on. And then we find out Richard is actually a real person, but a real man. That man a real person, that human being who chose to go on Beyonce internet and make this kind of move. Because when I first saw it, I was like, man, this seems like so real. But the person who's playing this, I wonder if he just saw his story. You know what? Let me gather myself. What I really want to focus on when it comes to Baby Reindeer is how much isolation, loneliness, and complex PTSD plays into limerence. How much, when you're isolated, when you're away from your community, when you're in a lonely state and people are not around to actually validate your personhood, how much limerence can come in and actually be your sense of self and actually like keep you going on. We see Martha coming into the bar. In the first scene, Richard narrating, he explains that this lady came to the bar and she seemed very distraught. He offered her free tea, and let me close the door. He offered her free tea, and boom, that was enough for her. That was enough for her to get enamored by him. And that reminds me of Risa Tisa's story. Risa Tisa said the same thing. She went on a date with Legion. Legion, her car tire popped. Legion was able to actually take her car into the nearest shop and buy her brand new tires. And for her, that was a good sign that he was financially stable. We tend to forget how much a lot of us are lacking kindness and just like compassion for others, where when small kindness is done, you're able to get stuck and see like, you know what, this person actually value me. So Martha, even though towards the show it showed like Richard and them were just using her as a laughing bag, that one gesture for her was enough for her to be fully invested in pursuing this man nonstop. I was watching my cousin, and she's like, this show shows how modern day women were so bold. We're so bold. And it's like modern women were so lonely. The extent we'll have to go to pursue someone who do not want us. Right? But also modern day men are so isolated that they would take what they can get if we're going in that narrative. If that's what we're getting out of it is modern day women are bold, like Martha, then modern day men, what is going on? But thankfully, someone like Richard, who was able to again take his narrative back, he was able to take us in the eyes of a man. Most times you've seen limerence, you've seen romantic comedies, it's in the eyes of a woman, like Bridget Jones' Diary, and so many others that have followed it. It's in the eyes of a woman talking about her love woes, talking about her triumph, and it's usually because I'm ugly and I'm not thin like the other white girls. But you watch this show and you see an Irish man coming in explaining why he was so stuck with this person for so long. When the cops asked Richard, how come you didn't report this sooner? It's been 6 months. Richard has already lied to the cops because Martha has already been on Richard for about a year. But again, he was able to go in and since he's a narrator, if he's controlling the story and explain, how can I report someone like Martha, who I know is so vulnerable, who I know is actually quite innocent, when I didn't report my abuser? That's the thing with complex PTSD. Once you've had that PTSD, and nothing is done by it, once you've been in such a trauma induced situation like Richard was in with that producer, and not having any sense of justice, any sense of like community to process it with, it becomes complex because other you are literally now your trauma. That's your new identity. You might even try to hide it in a mask, but that's the energy you're giving off once you've been in that situation, right? That's how he was able to attract someone like a Martha, who you could tell, right? We can look at her physically and assume she has been through a lot in life, and we can look at her, just her emotional state and her rationale and her abrasiveness, and assume this is a woman who has been through so much in life. No matter how much she was trying to mask herself and pretend she's this wealthy person, it was not it was not adding up. The math was never mathing with Martha, right? Because we as audience, we are aware enough to know that, hey, if this person is saying she's this big shot lawyer and she has this like high rise apartment, why does she need someone to pay for her something as simple as a cup of tea? But Martha is okay with that because that limerence makes her feel better than the crappy situation she's currently in. And when we watch a show like this, it's so easy to cringe and be like, could it be me? It is you today. It has been you yesterday. It will keep being you if you keep lying to people. A lot of us can relate to limerence. You might not be on Martha end, you might be on Richard's end. Richard doesn't have no friends. Richard wants to get along with the boys in the bar, but the boys in the bar are laughing at Richard. They're not laughing with Richard. They're using this situation with Martha to make him feel worse that he's a loser. This is the type of woman he can attract. We don't see Richard with any family towards the end. Richard and his girlfriend are broken up, and he's still staying in the home with his step girlfriend, with his ex girlfriend's mom. First of all, who moves in with their girlfriend's mom when they're in a relationship, let alone stays in that home even when the girlfriend leaves? So this is a man who's deeply isolated, and then we find out been essayed so badly, all in the hopes of pursuing his dreams. He was victimized so badly. And this stuff is so common for men to be victimized horribly by other men and women. We tend to forget that how much women can victimize women and other men, and how nobody is quite innocent and naive as we want to put them, even if they don't meet societal expectation of beauty. Everybody has a power to really cause harm in your life. Richard caused harm in Martha and in not Martha, in the therapist's life. Martha caused harm in Richard's life, but she was benefiting Richard. We saw it in that scene when Martha showed up to his stand-up comedian show. When Martha showed up to that stand-up show, that was the first time the audience was able to laugh along with Richard. Before then, it was crickets didn't even want to chirp stand up. Even crickets would not chirp at that man's stand up. But when Martha was in that building, Martha was okay being the butt of the joke, thus showing Richard's humor. He can only be humorous with someone who's below him, like Martha. And I love that again. He was able to tell that story honestly. Watching that story, I didn't feel bad for him. I didn't feel bad for Martha. I saw these are two human beings going through deep, traumatizing issues, and they're just connected in a way to find some sort of solace. And that's how limerence work. Limerence is a deep infatuation with someone, but usually it's not even with them because you don't know who they are. It's a deep infatuation with an idealized version of yourself. And if someone's validating that idealized version of yourself, that chemical release your brain give you being that dynamic, that's what I'm saying. All of you have been through this. Don't ever say it couldn't be me. It'll stay you right now, probably. You might end up with your limerence if you don't actually acknowledge it. Okay? That chemical release that happens in your brain when you're isolated, when you know you are not your ideal self and someone's validating your ideal self to you, that's a drug of its own. That's how stalkers end up being stalkers. That's how those who are stalked end up staying in that situation. Stockholm syndrome. That's how Stockholm syndrome happens. someone who you found repulsive, someone who you found as your abuser, if you end up being with them. And it's easier again to be like, ah, this is so cringy. Try to empathize. Empathizing with Martha and Richard doesn't mean you condone their behavior, neither of theirs. You should never steep low to find someone else to boost up your self-esteem. Yet, as humans, we do it all the time. So empathizing with them means you can actually empathize with yourself and realize that's not kind. What helped Richard go through this and even share this story with us is him finally empathizing with himself and having an ego death and realizing this dream of being a stand-up comedian was because he did not like himself. That's why this happened for so long. Someone was abusing for so long. He didn't like himself. How much of us can relate to that? Sometimes we're not our biggest fan. Sometimes we're not our biggest advocate. We let people walk over us because we hope it will get us to the next step in our goals. But anytime you're victimized by someone and you don't seek actual help for that, you don't have a community to revalidate you, that trauma becomes your aura.